Phone rings, and the director of personnel said, the president wants you to be ambassador to Canada. I said, put me down. 2 months later, we were there. So we consider ourselves very blessed that the president allowed us this unbelievable opportunity to go to Canada. And we've told you and we've told Canadians that leaving South Carolina and moving to Canada was a family decision. We all were involved in it, and it's something we prayed over. And that little piece of information generated yet another Canadian headline upon our arrival in Ottawa in 2005. God told Wilkins to go to Canada. The story was warning Canadians to expect the arrival of the next Mr. and Mrs. Jerry Falwell. So I have to admit that it wasn't an easy transition going from a decision maker and Speaker of the House, Bobby, to an advocate of decisions already made in Washington. And there really was nothing easy or smooth about our first few months on the new job. And the Canadian media captured it all. On live TV at the end of a long day in Toronto, I was making the point, because they had some shootings there, and they were saying the guns were coming from the States. I was making the point that it was Canadian citizens that were crossing the border, buying our guns illegally, and then smuggling them back into Canada illegally. However, I mistakenly accused Canadian officials of smuggling guns across the border illegally. And soon thereafter, I advised a group of top Canadian elected officials to stop having emotional tirades over the softwood lumber trade issue, the one issue that they were particularly emotional about, which simply led to more emotional tirades. But you know what they say about learning more from your mistakes than from your success. I think the fact that I'd never been a diplomat before, this was my first, last, and only diplomatic posting. And I was learning a whole new job and making a few mistakes along the way, but I wasn't doing it while I was hiding behind the desk in Ottawa. I was out with Canadians. I was listening to them. And I was learning a whole lot about the issues and about the Canadian mindset. And along the way, we were having a lot of fun. I got to pet a 650-pound wild Canadian polar bear in Churchill on the banks of the Hudson Bay, on the head, for a long time. It was heavily sedated. And the only reason I did it is one of the premier's kid, 5-year-old kid, did it, and I was sort of embarrassed not to. In Canada, they have the Rideau Canal in the middle of Ottawa. It's 11 miles long. They lower the water. It freezes this time of year, and it's the largest skating rink in the world. And so the first time it froze in January of '06, there I was with literally thousands of Canadians out skating the first Saturday it was open on the Rideau Canal. It was not a pretty sight. I had never skated before, but Susan had bought me skates for my birthday, and I was out there among the Canadians, being Canadian, skating on the Rideau Canal, drinking hot chocolate, eating beaver tails, and a few days later having surgery on my knee. And then there was a time we went to the Top Gun exercise in Cold Lake in Alberta. Many countries there doing the Top Gun exercises, and they talked me into getting in the back of a Canadian F-18, being flown by a guy with the call name of Pig. If you don't like roller coasters, I don't recommend it. But it was quite an experience. But somewhere between maybe the polar bear and the pilot named Pig, I became comfortable with my job as U.S. Ambassador to Canada. And I think probably more importantly, Canadians became used to the idea of a Southerner and a Republican, not only understanding their concerns, but committed to improving the state of this important bilateral relationship. When Susan and I first arrived in Canada, we were surprised by how tense, how negative the relationship seemed to be between the United States and Canada. And there were a number of reasons for this. A decades-old trade dispute over softwood lumber, mad cow disease had closed the U.S. border to Canadian cattle, lingering resentment over the Iraq war, tightening security controls at the border in the wake of 9/11, and a disagreement over the missile defense program. The truth was that the U.S. and Canada agreed on about 95% of all our bilateral issues. But folks on both sides of the border focused exclusively on the 5% of the issues in which we differed. And as I like to say, we were just flat out irritated over our irritants. And this negative energy was having a dramatic impact, and in my opinion, very harmful impact, on what is truly the world's best, most peaceful, productive trade relationship. In fact, most Americans are surprised to learn how huge this relationship really is. We are each other's largest trading partner. $1.5 billion, that's a B, billion dollars of commerce crosses our border every single day. Canada buys 4 times more goods from us than China does. Canada is a larger market for U.S. goods than all the European countries combined. 80% or more of all Canadian exports end up in the United States. And most Americans are shocked to learn it's Canada, and not the Middle East, that is our country's #1 foreign supplier of oil, of natural gas, of uranium, #1 supplier of energy. More than 22% of all our oil imports come from Canada. More than 86% of all our natural gas imports come from Canada. So Canada is very much an integral part of America's energy security.